In the 5th year after leaving Hong Kong Island, I lived in a humid and quiet small town in the south with my frail mother and deaf brother. I changed my phone number and severed all ties with the past. They all thought I was just throwing a tantrum, playing tricks, waiting for me to endure the hardships no longer and return to bow my head and admit my mistake to him. But over 1,800 days and nights passed, and I vanished like evaporation from the world, with no further news. Until that day, while working at the convenience store and wiping the counter, a diamond ring slipped from the pocket of my worn work uniform and rolled to the feet of the incoming person. He picked it up, looking at me in shock. "Selena? Is it really you? Where have you been all these years? When will you go back and apologize to Damien?" Damien, my ex-husband. His childhood sweetheart, Celia, was the sister of his lifesaver. The benefactor died blocking a bullet for him and entrusted him on his deathbed to take care of his only sister. In a crucial business negotiation, Celia willfully followed along, but due to personal grudges, she arbitrarily leaked the opponent's confidential information to a gossip magazine, causing the deal to collapse and attracting enmity from all sides. To protect her, Damien unhesitatingly shifted the blame onto me. My family's company inexplicably shouldered massive debts, my father jumped off a building, my mother suddenly suffered a heart attack and collapsed, and to this day, she relies on expensive medications to sustain her life. My brother, while seeking justice, encountered an accident and became deaf in both ears. I reported Damien under my real name for sacrificing me to protect Celia, but he countered by exposing all my privacy online. I became the most insidious person on all of Hong Kong Island, the ungrateful wolf attempting to drag down Damien. And the one who orchestrated all this was my husband of 7 years, with whom I shared a bed, Damien. Watching my mother's ECG show violent fluctuations again, I frantically pressed the call bell and rushed out of the ward to find a doctor. But I saw the attending physician standing in the corridor, obsequiously saying into the phone, "Yes, yes, Mr. Damien, we understand." At that moment, Damien, dressed in an expensive handmade suit, with a tall and straight figure, appeared at the ward door, his aura suppressing the entire floor into silence. He handed me a document. "Give up the pursuit of your mother's company bankruptcy case, sign it. I've already contacted foreign heart experts, once signed, I'll arrange a consultation immediately." His tone was flat, yet carried an unquestionable coercion. "It's either watching her waste away to the end or fighting for a sliver of hope, you choose." My whole body trembled, nails digging into my palms, and I asked in a quivering voice, why specifically?" A trace of complexity flashed in Damien's eyes, but it vanished in an instant, his words still icy. "Celia's brother saved my life. Without him, there would be no me today. That project mistake was just an accident. Even if she followed the rules, your mother's company might not have one. Sign it, and the past will be wiped clean. The expert team is already on standby. Afterward, I'll also arrange the best rehabilitation facility for your brother." My silence exhausted Damien's patience. His face darkened. "Not signing? Then your mother can wait for the medication to stop. Your brother won't get any more treatment either." Before the words finished, the sharp alarm from the monitor in the ward tore through the air. My mother had ventricular fibrillation. Several medical staff rushed in for resuscitation. Cardiac stimulants, defibrillation shocks, one after another, battering my last line of defense. Watching my mother's painful convulsions under the shocks, I completely broke down. Tears burst forth. I snatched the pen, trembling as I signed the document, biting my lips until they bled. "I'll sign. I won't pursue it. Save my mom, please." Damien reached out, gently wiping the tears from my face with his fingertip, but his eyes were devoid of any ripple. He put away the document and nodded to the doctor. But at that moment, his assistant hurried over and whispered, "Mr. Damien, Miss Celia heard you came to the hospital. She's emotionally agitated and feels discomfort in her chest." Damien's face changed abruptly, and he immediately turned to leave. I fiercely grabbed his sleeve, screaming hoarsely, "Damien! You said you'd save my mom." But his eyes were full only of concern for Celia. he didn't even glance back at me, hastily leaving with the expert team. "Mom." I collapsed by my mother's bed in tears. Only then did Damien impatiently turn back and instruct the two young doctors left behind, "Keep an eye on her, she won't die." That indifferent gaze pierced my already shattered heart like an ice pick. My vision went black, and I collapsed. Before losing consciousness, the only clear thought was, divorce. I must completely leave Damien and disappear forever. When I woke up, there was a box of still warm almond biscuits on the bedside, from the old shop I used to love the most. Next to it was a note: "The expert consultation is postponed first, Celia can't handle stimulation and needs someone with her. Your mother's surgery takes too long, I can't let the experts leave her side." Looking at those words, I laughed through tears. Laughing until my whole body trembled, my heart full of desolation. I wiped away the tears and dialed Leonard's number. He was the only reasonable elder in the Shin family. "Leonard, I agree to the divorce." I paused and added, "But I have a condition, help me stage an accident. I want to take my mom and brother and disappear completely." After discharge, I immediately found a lawyer to draft the divorce agreement. When I returned to that cold mansion, Damien was adjusting his tie in front of the mirror, preparing to pick up Celia. Seeing my pale face, he frowned. "Why do you look so bad?" I didn't answer and directly handed him the agreement. "What is this?" He was about to flip it open when his phone rang with Celia's exclusive ringtone. Without even looking at the content, he quickly signed his name and hurried out. "Celia is waiting for me. In the future, put such documents directly in the study." Looking at the signed agreement, I went straight to the law firm and submitted the divorce application. That night, as I was preparing to rest, Damien pushed the door open, his tone matter of fact. "Because of the previous project turmoil, Celia's reputation in the industry has been damaged. I'll hold a banquet where you publicly apologize to her, admit that it was your mother's company's poor management that caused the problem, and clear her name." I could hardly believe my ears. "You're dreaming." Damien's gaze turned cold. "Don't forget, your mother is waiting for the expert consultation, and your brother's future is in your hands." In an instant, all my strength was drained. In front of him, I would never win. At least, before my mother and brother safely left, I had to endure. "Fine," I said, "but the premise is to first arrange my brother's rehabilitation properly." Damien hesitated for a moment but ultimately agreed, requiring it after the banquet. On the night of the banquet, Damien attentively cared for Celia throughout. As soon as I entered, he urged me with his eyes to go on stage. I swallowed all the bitterness and stepped up one by one. When I picked up the microphone, my hand trembled so much I could barely hold it. I used to be such a proud person, but now, I was subjected to judgment from countless eyes. Today, I apologize for my previous misunderstanding of Miss Celia. All the untrue rumors about the project failure originated from me. It was my family's issue, I shouldn't blame Miss Celia. I hereby solemnly apologize to Miss Celia. The audience below immediately buzzed with discussions, their gazes toward me filled with contempt. Enduring the urge to flee, I bowed in Celia's direction. When I lifted my eyes, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Celia's smug look. I turned to leave but was stopped by Celia. "Sister Selena, I want to drink the mojito mixed over at the terrace, could you trouble yourself to get me one?" She intimately linked arms with me, pointing to the distant dark terrace. I knew I couldn't act excessively and couldn't refuse her. I had to nod and walk toward the terrace. As soon as I got there, the door to the terrace closed. A wine glass shattered at my feet. Several burly men surrounded me and grabbed me at once. "Who are you?" The leading man had a ferocious face. "Here to teach you a lesson. Offending Miss Celia means you'll suffer." He had people hold me down, his fists landing heavily on my abdomen. Until I coughed up blood and my consciousness blurred, he stopped. Then, they dragged me to the railing and pushed me over. Intense pain and the sensation of weightlessness pulled me down simultaneously. I felt the world spinning and let out a miserable scream. The next second, my body hit the ground heavily. Even the light before my eyes gradually faded. Before completely losing consciousness, I felt someone pick me up. Uncontrolled roars exploded in my ears. Without time to see who it was, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Damien. He was guarding the bedside, his eyes bloodshot. "It's good you're awake. You scared me to death." I frowned tightly, an uncontrollable severe pain coming from my head. He held my hand, saying in a trembling voice, "I've investigated, it was revenge from old rivals in the underworld, mistaking you for Celia. It was dark that night, and they recognized you as her. The people have been dealt with, don't be afraid." My heart gradually chilled, and I asked hoarsely, "Damien, if I say all this was instigated by Celia, would you believe me?" Damien's face sank instantly, withdrawing his hand. "Selena, enough is enough. Celia wouldn't do such a thing. I don't want to hear you slander her anymore. I promise you, I'll spend more time with you in the future, okay?" I didn't explain anymore. Perhaps due to a trace of guilt, he stayed with me for a long time that night. But I knew it was all an illusion. The next morning, the ward door was kicked open fiercely. Damien rushed in and yanked me up. "Where is Celia? Where did you hide her?" I was bewildered and at a loss. But he threw a familiar pearl earring in front of me. It was the one I wore to the banquet. "This is yours, right? Celia sent a distress message last night. When I arrived at her apartment, she was gone, only this left." I numbly denied, "I don't know. Yesterday was so chaotic, my things could have dropped anywhere." And Damien hadn't paid any attention to my attire at all. He only knew to link Celia's incident to me. This was also the effect Celia wanted to achieve. Damien didn't believe me. To force me to confess, he actually sent people to take my brother from the rehabilitation center and tie him to a crane at an abandoned construction site in the suburbs. The site's rammer started, roaring and aiming at the soft soil pile below my brother. He was blindfolded, unable to hear the machine's massive roar, just struggling blindly. Damien held the remote control and said to me, "From now on, every minute, the rammer will smash once. The next time, it will aim at your brother's legs. After 3 minutes, if you don't speak, the target will be his head." The first minute arrived, and the machine roared down. Without thinking, I broke free from the guards, lunged over, and forcefully pushed my brother away. The next second, the huge impact force sent me flying, landing heavily. Damien rushed over and picked me up, frantically wiping the blood from my mouth. "I'm sorry." At that moment, his assistant ran over. "Mr. Damien, we found Miss Celia. She just went to the seaside to relax, her phone was out of battery." Damien looked at me on the verge of death, then at his phone, and finally said to the assistant, "Send her to the hospital, use the best medicine. I will go see Celia first." I vomited blood and closed my eyes. The last bit of hope was completely extinguished. After a long rescue, I stayed in the ICU for a full 5 days and finally survived. After waking up, I weakly picked up my phone and contacted Leonard. "Leonard, is everything arranged? As soon as we leave, we must immediately flee far away." The other side had already sent my divorce certificate. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. After a long pause, Leonard said, "This matter, the Shin family has wronged you." He seemed to want to say something but only let out a sigh. On the day of discharge, I didn't alert anyone. I first went to see my mother and brother. My brother's legs had comminuted fractures. Due to excessive fright, he shut himself off and didn't want to see anyone. I pushed open my mother's ward door and unexpectedly saw Celia standing by her bed, holding a medicine bottle. My heart sank, and I rushed up. "Celia! What are you doing?" I pushed her away, and the bottle fell to the ground. Celia was startled at first, but seeing it was me, she smiled instead, lowering her voice. "Just bankruptcy isn't enough? As long as your mother doesn't die, I'll carry the reputation of indirectly causing her company's death. Only when she's dead will this be over." Slap. I slapped her hard. My wrist was immediately gripped tightly by Damien, who had rushed over upon hearing. His face was full of anger. "Selena! Celia immediately threw herself into his arms crying, "Damien. I just heard Auntie wasn't feeling well and came to check. I didn't do anything." Damien roared at me, "Apologize to Celia." Celia shook her head in panic, "Forget it, Damien. I know I'm an eyesore, I shouldn't get too close to you. I'll go abroad to avoid Sister Selena always misunderstanding." She said this, but still eyed me. And she didn't pull away from Damien at all. Anger surged in me, and I still wanted to struggle up and tear at her. Damien immediately restrained me. "Celia, tell me, how can you calm down?" Celia timidly said, "Sister Selena has too much hostility. I know a friend at a psychological rehabilitation center who might help her adjust." Damien nodded, "That's a way, do as you say." "Selena, you need to calm down. The things that happen these days do need intervention. Rest assured, I'll have someone cure you." No matter how I resisted, I was still sent to that so-called rehabilitation center. The following days were a true nightmare. I was bound to a bed, sustained only by medications. The doctor diagnosed me with hysteria and treated me with electroshock therapy for 7 days and nights. The entire ward echoed with my desperate screams. 7 days later, Damien came to pick me up. "How did you get so thin?" he frowned and asked. I didn't answer him, staring blankly ahead. His phone rang with a message from Celia. He informed me as if notifying, "Tonight is a party to calm Celia down, come with me." I offered no resistance and got in the car. Looking at the scenery flashing by outside the window, my heart turned into a sheet of ice. I was already dead. It should end. It was time for rebirth. In the evening, the party was at a hillside villa. As soon as I entered, Celia blocked me in a corridor corner. She sneered, "Your life is really tough, even that couldn't kill you." I knew that rehabilitation center was nothing. It was just a setup by Celia to torment me. I ignored her, lowered my head, and sent a message to Leonard, "Implement the plan tonight, right here." I had just sent the location when Celia knocked my phone away hard. She grabbed my hair. But I laughed, looking up at her. "Celia, have you won? You've schemed so much, even using the life-saving grace to hold him hostage, thinking that way you can sit in Mrs. Damien's position?" Her face changed abruptly. I continued to poke her sore spot. "Damien treats you as a sister. When he married me, at least there was true affection. For you, there's only responsibility and guilt. We are legal husband and wife. As long as I'm alive, you'll always be the mistress." The words mistress stung her. She suddenly lost control, choking my neck and pushing me toward the window. "My brother lost his life for him. How could my weight and his heart lose to you?" I smiled and relaxed my strength accordingly. Celia slid in my direction, as if pushing me down. I flipped straight over the window edge, falling into the abyss. I closed my eyes tightly and landed on the pre-prepared mat. The responding car was ready. Someone sprinkled countless blood plasma on the ground. Success. I put on my coat and got into the car. Finally, I could take my mom and brother and escape this hell named Damien. This was the place of ending, and it would also be my place of rebirth. The car vanished into the thick night. Outside the window, Hong Kong Island's dazzling lights receded rapidly, like a grand and illusory dream. No, a nightmare. Now, the dream was over. "Miss Selena, everything is proceeding as planned," the man in the front passenger seat said softly. He was arranged by Leonard. "The scene has been set up, Mr. Leonard will handle the follow-up. We're going directly to pick up your mother and brother now, then to the dock." I nodded, my throat dry, unable to make any sound. My body was still trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the exhaustion of surviving a calamity. I used a death to fight for a way out for myself and my family. From now on, Damien and I were strangers. Not long after I fell from the building, Damien searched the corridor because Celia hadn't returned for a long time. By the window, there was no one, only an earring she had left behind. His heart inexplicably tightened, some ominous premonition gripping his heart. "Celia?" he called, walking to the window and looking down. In the shadows of the garden below, there seemed to be a human-shaped outline, and large patches of dark spreading liquid. Ah! A scream came from a waiter below. Damien's brain buzzed, going blank. He practically tumbled down the stairs, pushing aside the gathering crowd. On the ground, scattered were my jewelry and one of my shoes. In the center of that glaring bloodstain, there was nothing, only a blurry mark as if something had been dragged. Selena, it's Selena. Damien staggered a step, his face instantly pale as paper. He fiercely grabbed the collar of the bodyguard beside him, his voice hoarse and distorted. Where is she? Where is Madame? The bodyguard trembled. Mr. Damien, when we arrived, we only saw this blood. Search. Find her for me. Turn over the entire Hong Kong island to find her. Damien roared out of control, his eyes filled with bloodshot. Alive, see the person, dead, see the body. He couldn't believe that Selena, who was just in front of him with blank and numb eyes, could turn into a cold. He didn't even dare think that word. Celia stood behind him, her face equally pale, but deep in her eyes flashed a trace of pleasure and relief. She timidly pulled Damien's arm. Damien, Sister Selena, how could she take her own life? It's all my fault, I shouldn't have spoken to her. Damien fiercely shook off her hand, for the first time showing such a sharp gaze toward her. What did you say to her just now? Celia was frightened, tears streaming. I just wanted to comfort her, tell her not to hate you too much. I don't know how she just. Damien didn't listen anymore, like a trapped beast, he frantically dialed my phone, always off. 3 days later, at a desolate reef by the sea, my body washed ashore by the waves was found. Disfigured, wearing the clothes from that night, DNA comparison, confirmed as Selena. The moment Damien saw the report, he slumped into the chair as if all strength was drained. Shock overwhelmed him like a tsunami. He never thought Selena would leave in such a resolute way. That woman who was once bright and proud, later becoming enduring and numb. Really, dead? He recalled her smile when they first met, the soup she made for him after marriage, her gentle massages when he was tired. More so, her desperate eyes when she begged him to believe her time and again, her unhesitating signature on the divorce agreement, her last gaze at him, like stagnant water. It was him who pushed her away time and again. It was him who personally forced her to a dead end. Damien let out a painful roar, punching the wall hard. The pain like fracturing knuckles couldn't relieve even a fraction of his heartache. Why did Selena appear so far away after falling from the building? This wasn't suicide. It was a murder. Yes, murder, someone was harming her. Damien began frantically searching for the murderer. He mobilized all possible forces, from legal and illegal channels, digging 3 feet deep to find the person who killed me. He first found the group that attacked me on the terrace that night, following the vine to the melon, and actually traced some vague clues pointing to Celia. Although the evidence was cleaned up very thoroughly, Damien suspected Celia for the first time. He began to re-examine everything from the past. In the Project Leak incident, did he really not suspect Celia? Or was it the shackles of gratitude that made him choose self-deception? Was Selena's brother being kidnapped and threatened really just her making unreasonable trouble? He sent people to secretly investigate Celia and that rehabilitation center. While he was doing this, he suddenly learned that my body had been cremated according to procedure, and the ashes were missing. It was Leonard's order. In the end, Damien didn't even have a place to mourn. He placed the box of almond biscuits I left him, already hardened, in the most prominent spot in the study, facing it day and night. He moved into our former marital room, lying on the cold bed, insomniac night after night. Closing his eyes, he saw me covered in blood. Nostalgia and self-blame gnawed at his soul like venomous snakes. Celia sensed Damien's change. He no longer responded to her every request as before, his eyes carried scrutiny and distance. She tried to hold him hostage with old affections and her brother's grace, urging him to fulfill his promise to marry her. But Damien always evaded. Until one day, the person Damien sent to investigate brought back a nurse from the rehabilitation center. Under Damien's pressure, that person revealed how Celia bribed them to subject me to inhuman torture. Almost simultaneously, the technical department recovered some deleted data from one of Celia's old phones. It prominently included her contact records with the terrorist attackers, and the original version of a call recording clip with her deceased brother. The recording proved that the so-called deathbed entrustment was deliberately edited by her. Her brother only hoped Damien would take care when possible, far from entrusting a lifetime and infinite tolerance. Damien was as if struck by lightning. He recalled my pale explanations time and again, recalled me asking him, if I say it was instigated by Celia, would you believe me? That desperate look. How did he respond then? Selena, enough is enough. Celia wouldn't do such a thing. Regret instantly burned away all his reason. Damien rushed to find Celia, his eyes blood red, as if to kill. Celia! You've deceived me so bitterly. Selena's death was caused by you. It was you. He choked her neck, almost strangling her. In extreme terror, Celia admitted everything. I just love you, Damien. What right does Selena have to get you? My brother died for you, you should have been mine. She screamed hysterically. Damien looked at her twisted face, feeling utmost disgust. He suddenly released his hand, like discarding garbage. Your brother saved my life, did I repay the Song family with a life? Damien's voice was bone-chillingly cold. But from now on, you and I, all graces are severed. He didn't kill her himself, but he withdrew all protection and resources given to Celia and her family. Those who once flattered the Song family because of Damien instantly changed faces. Enemies from the previous Project Leak came knocking, and the Song family quickly went bankrupt. Celia's end was miserable. It said she later fell into prostitution and died of illness. Punishing Celia didn't bring Damien any relief. Instead, my death became even heavier due to the revelation of the truth. It was him who personally turned the blade against the one who loved him most. Regret was insufficient to describe even a fraction of Damien's pain. He grew increasingly frantic, mobilizing every resource of the Shin family to search the globe for a man who was dead. He stubbornly insisted that I hadn't died, that the body was a fake, that I was merely in hiding. He refused to accept my death. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The search never ceased. The Shin Group's business was expanded by him in a nearly self-destructive manner, just to have stronger search capabilities. Damien became gloomy, paranoid, unapproachable. Except for searching for me, he had no interest in anything. Everyone on Hong Kong Island knew that Shin CEO Damien had gone mad because he forced his ex-wife to death. In the 5th year, his subordinates finally found some clues in that humid small town in the south. A woman resembling me had worked at a convenience store, with a frail elderly person and a deaf young man. Damien got the news and immediately dropped everything, taking the earliest flight. With a mood almost like pilgrimage, yet carrying fear deep into his bones, he found that convenience store. Then, he saw that diamond ring roll to his feet. He saw the figure he had searched for 5 years, etched into his bones. Selena, it's really you. Damien's voice trembled uncontrollably. He stepped forward, wanting to grab me. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. Sir, you've mistaken me for someone else. I bent down, picked up the diamond ring, and casually threw it into the trash bin. This was my attitude toward the ring and toward him. I'm just a clerk here. No. Impossible. You're Selena. You're my Selena. Damien was emotionally agitated, trying to approach again. You're not dead. I knew you weren't dead. Come back with me, Selena. I know I was wrong, it was all my fault. The convenience store's customers and colleagues all looked over. I frowned, my tone distant and cold. Sir, please don't interfere with my work. If you continue like this, I'll call security. Damien looked at me as if truly seeing me for the first time. In his memory, Selena, whether smiling or in pain, always had emotions in her eyes. But now, looking at him, I had no ripples. This complete indifference hurt him more than hate. Selena, please. Give me a chance to make it up to you, to make it up to Mom, to make it up to my little brother. He was incoherent, his eyes red-rimmed, not a trace of the Hong Kong underworld boss's authority left. My mom is dead. I interrupted him, my voice still flat. Not long after you left with the expert team to find Celia, her condition worsened, and she couldn't be saved. The expert consultation you promised never came. Damien was struck as if by lightning, stiff in place. My brother's legs are crippled. After that construction site incident, he could never stand again. He was originally just deaf, now. I didn't continue, turning to organize the shelves. So, I don't need your compensation. Between us, it should have ended long ago. No, it's not settled. Damien painfully held his head. It's what I owe you, I'll repay with my lifetime. Mr. Damien. I turned back, between us, there is no lifetime. From the moment you chose to sacrifice me and my family for Celia. From the moment I believed you and signed that document giving up pursuit. From the day my mom died, Selena was already dead. The current me has no relation to you, to Hong Kong Island, to the past. Please leave, don't disturb my life anymore. After saying that, I no longer looked at him and continued my work. Damien stood in place, like a statue that instantly lost all vitality. Looking at my busy, indifferent back, he finally understood what he had lost. It wasn't losing a woman named Selena. But losing the qualification to be loved, losing the road back, losing the only light in his life. He regretted deeply, heartbroken, but could no longer exchange for even a trace of my look back. Damien didn't leave this small town. He rented a house near the convenience store, like a ghost, watching me go to work, get off work, go to the hospital to care for my brother every day. He tried various ways to compensate, sending expensive medicines, contacting foreign ear and orthopedic experts, even offering the best living and medical conditions for my brother. I returned everything untouched. The things he sent piled up at the door of his rented house. When he came to find me, I called the police, reporting harassment. If he blocked my way home, I took a detour. He transferred money through various channels, I didn't take a cent. His remorse, his pain, his madness stirred no ripple in me. My heart had died 5 years ago, in that cold ward, at the instant my mother's heartbeat stopped, at the moment my brother's legs were declared incurable. What lived now was just a movable shell. Damien watched me grow thinner day by day, with unresolvable silence and fatigue in my brows and eyes. I still refused to accept any of his pity. His own body deteriorated day by day. Long-term depression, alcoholism, plus hidden dangers from crazy work, completely broke him down. The doctor diagnosed heart depression, severe liver and kidney damage, already at the end of his strength. But he still stubbornly stayed in this small town, like a self-punishing sentence. Another humid rainy day. I pushed the wheelchair, taking my brother out from the hospital checkup. Due to years of being bedridden and emotional depression, his body was getting worse. At the street corner, we encountered Damien standing with an umbrella. He was so thin he was almost unrecognizable, his face ashen, only those sunken eyes still stubbornly following me. Selena. His voice was hoarse, almost inaudible. Brother, is he okay? I didn't speak, pushing the wheelchair intending to detour. But he staggered to block the front, pulling out a velvet box from his bosom, opening it to reveal that rolled diamond ring. I'm sorry. I know, whatever I say is too late. He coughed violently, blood seeping from his mouth. This, originally, is yours. I looked at that diamond ring still shining in the rain. As if seeing many years ago, when he put it on me, that illusory happiness. I extended my hand. In Damien's ashen eyes, a faint light suddenly burst forth. Then, he saw me pick up the ring, without looking, casually throw it into the roadside sewer. A clang light sound, completely drowned in the rain. The light in Damien's eyes was completely extinguished. He looked at me, as if finally accepting the final judgment. I pushed my brother, brushing past him without a moment's pause. After a few steps, I heard the sound of a heavy object falling behind, and passers-by's exclamations. I didn't look back. 3 days later, Damien died in the hospital. Cause of death, multiple organ failure. It said that before his death, he kept chanting my name, staring blankly at the ceiling, repeatedly saying, "I regret. Selena. I'm sorry." Ultimately, in boundless misery and regret, he breathed his last. To his death, he couldn't get a word of forgiveness from me. When the news came, I was wiping the counter at the convenience store. My action paused for a moment, then continued. Outside the window, the southern sky was still humid, stiflingly oppressive. An era, with that man's passing, completely ended. And my life continued. Carrying eternal pain and unyielding resolve to never look back.